It's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another tip, trick, or technique session. This week we're having a look at fattening up vocals with parallel compression. So I've sort of covered off parallel processing and parallel compression in other videos, but this one here we're just going to look at specifically fattening up your vocals. Okay, so obviously if you already know those techniques, then this could be very simple, very quick, and should be just a breeze for you. But if you haven't seen any of that being done, then this is obviously new for you. So we're going to have a look at that. So just to run through the basics, we're going to have a vocal track, and we're going to basically have an effects track that we are then going to put some compression on that effects track, and we're going to send our vocal to that. We are going to heavily compress that signal, more than you would normally compress a vocal track, but because it's on an effects track, and we're then going to, as the name implies, put it in parallel, so we're going to blend it in with our original vocal track. So we're not affecting our original vocal track, we're in theory duplicating the vocal track using a send, and doing some parallel compression or heavy compression on that, and then we blend the two signals together. And what that does is, because the other track is so heavily compressed, it is really bringing up the quiet parts of the vocal and reducing the loud parts of the vocal, and really narrowing it down into this little condensed spot or space. And when we blend that in with our very dynamic vocal, what we're doing is we're basically adding all of this weight and thickness to our vocal. So this is very useful if you've got a vocalist that sounds great, but maybe they just are not cutting it in the mix. They're sounding a bit thin. They're just not carrying the power that is required based on the other instrumentation, which is quite common, especially if you have rock tracks and things like that, where the guitars and the bass and everything and drums are so powerful. It's very hard for a vocalist to compete at that same level. So if we can give that vocalist some extra oomph, then we can get them to compete, and we can get them to sit with that band at the same intensity and the same power. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have a look at that. So let's get into it. Okay, so what we've got is we've got a couple of vocal tracks, but let's just mute all our other vocal tracks here, and we're just going to have this one vocal track. So if we just play a part of the song. Okay, so here's the track as it is. So it's not bad, but you can hear there that the vocal is sort of lacking. It's not standing out. It's not carrying the power that it needs to get through this track. And this isn't even a heavy rock track. This is quite a mellow track. So what we need to do is obviously do our parallel compression. So the first step we need to do is create an effects channel, right? So I've got one here that I've already created, and I've called it Vox MFX. And then you can put on any plugins that you like, but obviously we're talking about parallel compression here. So first off, what I've done is I've got a little bit of some filtering on this. All this plugin is doing, ignore everything else, it's just doing some filtering. So I'm just doing a high pass filter here at pretty high, so say that's about 150 hertz, and I'm doing a low pass filter here at about 8 to 9K. And the reason I'm doing that is I just want to dull this out, all right? I don't want this parallel compression to be extremely bright, and I don't want it to have a lot of real low-end thump. I want to thicken up the middle section of the vocal, really where the vocal sits, not add to any sis up top noise or any rumble down the bottom. So that's why I'm filtering those out, just to make sure that we're concentrating our sound in that middle region where the vocal is sitting. So once we've done that, then we push it into a compressor. Now you can use any compressor you like. I'm using here a UAD 1176, okay, because I can really push this to get a high amount of compression. But I'll show you a similar effect in another compressor as well in a minute. But let's start with this one here. So with this compressor here, I've gone for a pretty high ratio. We can go even higher with the all buttons, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stick with the 20:1 ratio, which is basically a limiter. And our input here is going to determine how hard we hit the compressor, and our output here is just balancing the level so that we can bypass the plug-in in and out without a volume increase. The numbers on this are sort of backwards, so the higher the number, the faster it is. So I've got a fast attack, so we're basically clamping down as soon as we can and compressing instantly, which is going to cut on those transients. And then we're going to release quickly as well, which means that then it lets go and the very low sounding signals are going to get boosted up because of the gain increase that we're doing. So we'll see the meter as we go through this. Now, the way I do this is that as opposed to say a reverb or something like that, where I would have the fader for the effects channel at 0 and adjust how much signal is applied by controlling the send volume. In the case of this one here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send all of the signal. So if I turn that on, all right, so that is sending to the Vox MFX over here. And I'm sending all of the signal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend the fader in to the level I desire. So let's say we bring that down to nothing at the moment, so that'll have no impact. Now the reason I do that is because if we open this plugin, I want to always consistently get the amount of compression that I'm looking for. Okay, but if I adjust this send, it will reduce how much compression gets done. All right, so let me play the track again and I'll show you with it set to full. All right, I've got the fader down here, so we're not adding any yet, but we're still sending all of it to the plugin. So you're going to see the plugin start to respond. And you can see it's jumping up pretty high as it's doing compression there. So we're getting a fair bit of compression going on. We could even go harder if we want to, but we're getting a fair bit at the moment. And I'll let you hear what that sort of sounds like in a minute with our listen button in Cubase. Okay, but you can see there's a consistent level of compression going on. Now, if I was to adjust the send volume here and adjust it that way, you'll see nothing's happening there. And that's why I don't want to use this control, because depending on where I set this depends on how hard it compresses. And I want that compressor to be hard all the time, consistently, and I blend in the effect using the fader as opposed to using the send. Okay, so let's put this in listen mode and just turn this up. So with listen mode in Cubase, what it does is it basically, you can set how the listen works, but the way I have it set is that it makes the sound of this track that I turn the listen on about 18 dB louder than everything else in the audio. So it turns all the other tracks down by 18 dB so that this one stands out, so I can hear what is happening with this one. But it's just an audio thing, okay? It's not actually doing it as such in the mix. Obviously, you want to turn this off before you bounce out or anything, but it's just a checking thing. It's good to be able to check because it's unlike solo. When you go into solo mode, all you hear is that track. So if you're doing EQs and things like that, you're hearing it in by itself in isolation. If you do it in listen mode, the way I have it here, you can still hear it in reference to the rest of the song. You just hear it louder, so you can still make some judgment calls on how something sounds and how something fits in the mix, as opposed to how you can't hear how it sounds in the mix when you do it in solo mode. But you can still hear it clearly enough to make some calls. It's not blended in with the song totally. So let's have a listen with it in listen mode.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up.
So you can hear that sounds fairly heavily compressed, but we could even go even harder. So let's try that.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could. When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up.
So what I want you to do is pay attention to how things are not jumping up and have a listen to how you can hear the throat noises at the end of phrases. They've been brought up in volume as such because of the compression that's happening, and it's very heavily compressed. So I'll sort of do before, after, or bypass and unbypass. Have a listen to those sort of particular items.
When I feel down, you pick me up. When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up.
So you can hear a lot more of the breath, the growl, little noises as words are finished and that sort of stuff. Now, some of those breaths you might want to reduce because they're maybe not going to enhance your song so much, but that's just sort of what you get with this. Okay, so let's take it out of listen mode and let's drop it back down and let's play it again now. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to bring this fader up and we're going to see what it sounds like as we bring it up. So you can hear there when I mute it, the vocal sort of disappears into the mix, unmute it, and suddenly it comes out. You can hear it. It's clear, it's present, it's got some more power to it. So what if we solo the vocal and just have a listen to it that way? Let's see what it does. Okay, so again, let's reduce that compressor down and we'll just hear it straight.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could. You make me feel. When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could.
So we're getting a little bit of a volume increase there, but it's not a massive volume increase. What we're hearing more is that it's standing out because we've just added this fatness and power to it, and it's coming out there. So you can hear it in solo, but it's actually easier to hear in the song. That's what I believe anyway. Now, we can obviously do this compression with any sort of compressor we like. So we could replace that with a stock one. So there's Cubases there. So like I said, we go up pretty high, fast attack, pretty fast release, and we're going to hit it very hard.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could.
So let's turn the other compressor off first. That would be helpful.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground.
Okay, so that's pretty heavily compressed. So let's take it out of solo and let's do the same thing again.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could. You make me feel.
So again, we get a similar effect there, but we could try a different one again. Let's say you want to go with the Waves R compressor, something like that. So let's get our ratio extremely high. Here we could even go 50:1. We want a fast attack, fast release, and we're going to adjust our threshold.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could. You make me feel.
All right, so let's blend that one in.
When I feel down, you pick me up, down on the ground and all the way up. You pick me up, you make me feel good, make me feel good when no one else could. You make me feel.
All right, so there you go. That is fattening up a vocal with parallel compression. You can see how much impact that has and how different your vocals sound. So if you want to get that extra power in your vocals, that extra fatness, and get it standing out in your mix, you know, you're struggling with to get it to stand up against the rest of the instrumentation, then parallel compression is something to definitely try. And hopefully that's been pretty easy to follow. You can watch some more in-depth tutorials of mine about parallel compression and how to do it in greater detail. But if you follow those simple steps, then it should be pretty easy. So check it out on your mix. Let me know in the comments, thoughts, questions, anything like that. Let me know. Hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.